Well, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is a show that started in the mid 2000s by a handful of people. The second season introduced Danny DeVito. Oh, you meant like what I was going to refer. Oh, sorry, my bad. So it's Mac comes in and is like, "It's over. I don't know what I did, but it's over." And that applies to so many modern RPG quest lines because you have no idea. Like Dark Souls 3, I'm replaying that and I went up, like, I saved some lady and she was like, "I'm grateful for your help. Our paths may not cross again." And then I go back to her again and she's like, "Oh, you seem like a cool dude. Maybe we'll hang out again." And then I progressed some other stuff and I came back and she was like, "You're a piece of shit." And I was like, "What? What did I do?" I don't know what I did. So,
Well, welcome to the High Contrast Podcast. There's a lot of times in Baldur's Gate 3 where it feels like that, where it's like, oh, you mean because I did this one thing that I didn't know had any consequence, now I'm forced down a certain plot line that is like really difficult to deal with. Is a lot of scum saving, and
yeah.
it's very frustrating because the game of D&D, you can't do that. It's
Right.
it's very much you just live what you live.
Unless you beg the DM to, like, "Okay, go back. Come on. Come on, just go back. Can we go back?"
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. It's so I mean it's a game and it has to work that way, but it's probably one of the best games I've ever played in my life, and really satisfied to finally like turn off my wireless keyboard and realize for the last time like I can replay some of the game, but I'm not like coming back to trudge forward
Hmm.
anymore. It's wild.
Did you see any of the gameplay I did of Disco Elysium?
Mm-mm.
I strongly encourage you to play that game because it is based on dice rolls
Mm.
and you can save scum, but I don't recommend it because you might think, "Oh, I need a high dice roll here."
Oh.
But you don't. You don't want a high dice roll. So, for example, I came across two old dudes playing. It was like marbles, but with larger orbs or spheres, and it's like, "Oh, you pick up the ball. See if you can throw it as far as you can." And I save scummed until I got a high dice roll. And then the guy chewed me out because he's like, "We're playing petanque. Like, we're keeping all the balls right here. We need a new ball. Go get a new ball." Another one is like you find an old abandoned shop and there's a weight, uh, uh, a lifting bar. I don't lift weights. I don't know. What is it called? The bar with the weights on it.
Bar
Eh, Barbell? Sure. And,
bench prep.
well, no, that's an exercise. I know that. But it's that bar. And
Yeah.
you're like, you tell your partner because you're police officers. He's like, I bet I can lift this up and lift this weight." And if you do, and then you drop it on the ground, it makes a really loud noise. And somebody you're pursuing hears that noise. So, like, you don't want to lift that weight. So, if you want to play a game where you can never know for sure what is going to happen based on your dice rolls, play Disco Elysium
Mm.
and just work your way through it and accept the story as it is. Don't save scum, don't do anything like that, and just go forward. And I guarantee you're going to want to play it again with the different types of characters. I could go on and on and on about Disco Elysium. I will spare you that for now, but there's a lot of ways to play it and ways to interpret what's happening based on the stats you have. It's amazing.
Yeah, I got a little distracted. Again, I do this. Apparently,
Mm-hmm.
this is something that I learned from watching
Oh,
the
hang on a
editing of
second.
the last one. Yep, yep. I I start to get ahead of like what is the next topic we're going to talk about, and I realized I don't actually know a lot about what's happening television wise with the DCU because we're going to
What
talk
is
about today's
television?
superheroes. We're talking
Super.
we're talking about mostly Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah, yeah, I know them.
Um, but Deadpool and Wolverine is interesting and unique in the fact that it is the only Marvel movie to come out this year, last year.
Hmm.
And that is partially because of the writer's strike and partially because of the slew of failures that have been plaguing. I mean, as Deadpool points out, he turns to Wolverine at one point and says, "Welcome to the MCU, by the way. You're joining at a bit of a low point." And um, he's not wrong. I mean, between Thor 4, Ant-Man 3, I liked the Marvels, but it didn't do that great. Um, TV shows like Secret Invasion, She-Hulk, which again I liked, but the world hated. Um, there have just sort of just been flop after flop, and there's this like, oh, I want to look it up, but I also don't want to watch it again. The video of Kevin Feige talking about, well, we realized as a people were like, oh, you're giving us all this stuff and we love all of it, but it's just so much. How do we have love for everything that's coming out? I'm like, no, dude, no. Yeah, you're overloading. Yes, you got the point that you're overloading the market and it's becoming a slog. But no, it's not just that, oh, everyone just loves so much. They're getting, it's I don't think it's like a superhero burnout thing, but it's just they set these train tracks down to try and make Kang the Conqueror a thing, and they started steamrolling ahead, and everything started to not work right with audiences. And now they've completely relayed the tracks to bring Robert Downey Jr. back. How do you feel about that, by the way?
I'm looking at the Marvel movies and in their phases, and I realized I have not seen. Let's see here. Of Phase 4, I've seen two movies: Spider-Man and Doctor Strange.
Mhm.
The multiverse Doctor Strange.
Did you like it?
Uh, I did. I
Okay.
really did. But it was all because of Sam Raimi and not to do with anything associated with Marvel whatsoever.
That
It
wig, man. I can't do that wig.
the wig, what wig?
Doctor Strange is his
Oh,
Lego
oh,
hair.
his Lego hair. Wow. I did not see of Phase 5, which is the current phase? Question mark.
Mhm.
I have seen one movie, and that is Deadpool and Wolverine. I couldn't even tell you anything about. You mentioned the Marvels.
Mhm.
I have no idea what that's all about.
Oh,
I saw. Oh wait, hang on. No, I lied. I'm sorry. Phase 4. I also saw Black Widow and Shang Chi. I did not see the Eternals, Thor, or Black Panther.
oh, you should see Black
Okay.
Panther. That's genuinely a great movie.
Two. The second
Yep.
one.
Yep.
Okay. Black Panther Forever. Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Excuse me.
Yeah, like Ryan Coogler is still getting to be like a very firm authority figure on telling the story, and the story is the grief of the loss of Chadwick Boseman.
Hmm.
Now
Right on.
it has the superhero spectacle in there, but the movie's like over 2 hours, 20 minutes, something like that long. So there's plenty of time for them to let the grief breathe and let the superhero movie stuff happen on its own.
It's funny you say that because are you familiar with the phrase "if all you have is a hammer, the every problem is a nail"?
Yeah.
Meaning, like you can only see things through the lens of what's at your disposal.
Hmm.
So I mentioned to you the other day we're watching the Fast and Furious franchise at my house, and we just watched Fast. Or no, all the names are so garbage. Furious 7,
Yeah.
and that's the last movie Paul Walker was in. And so I'm noticing a lot of parallels between. I'm so sorry. Noticing a lot of parallels between Wakanda Forever and Furious 7. 2 hours, 20 minutes roughly, and the dealing with the loss of Paul Walker. Not in the same way, because I understand in Wakanda Forever, he's gone.
Yeah.
Is that right? Like he's not there. He's he's
Yes.
he's gone. And it's them going like, oh, well, what do we do now? This was we patchworked CG Paul Walker onto his brother's faces, and had a really good final scene of the movie. I will say that.
Yeah.
Multiple times I turned to my partner and said, "This these guys robbed trucks of DVD players and
Yeah.
TVs, and now they are international super spies."
With some of the worst on-screen CPR that I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, there was the CPR scene with Dom right at the very
Yeah.
end. I forgot about that. I know that this started an argument the other night when we saw each other, but I still say Too Fast, Too Furious is the best one. It has yet to be beat. It's just fun. But we're not here. Sorry, we're not here to talk about the Fast and Furious franchise. I would love to have
It's
a whole
not.
conversation about it. Don't listen to him. It is.
We absolutely could do an episode on the original Fast and
What's the
Furious and talk
critical
about the sequel.
response of Fast and the Furious franchise warranted?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't looked at the critical response, but I guarantee if two has a low score, it was not warranted.
We could look at 1 and 10 and we could see like how
God. How did we get here?
yeah.
Yeah, like the frog is boiling, if you know that parable.
Um but yeah, so this happened with Marvel where they were getting burned out and they decided to
Hmm.
announce that they're going creatively differently where they're going to dial back the projects they're making, retool some of the projects they're making, and take a step forward with like a concrete plan in a new direction that they think will satisfy more people. And yet in 2025, we got multiple TV shows and 3 movies again, just like in 2023. And I understand they had the writer strike and the one of the big tentpole shows that I'm really excited about for a lot of obvious reasons is Daredevil, which is one that
Oh,
they rewrote during the writer's strike several episodes in order to retroactively canonize the Netflix show. And they threw some editing of that into Echo. So Echo is actually technically the first show or movie in Marvel's canon to be a part of this new trajectory that are going on. But
I'm so sorry. I have no idea what you're talking about.
yeah,
I have been so behind on my Marvel consumption. Sorry, Disney overlords. I'm so
Echo
behind.
Echo is a she was in Hawkeye, but you probably didn't see Hawkeye.
Nope.
Um, she is a deaf superhero, Native American, and she's fantastic. She was introduced by David Mack in he's a writer and artist um in Daredevil as
Mhm.
a love interest slash assassin that works for the Kingpin. And
Naturally.
so Kingpin, uh, uh, the actor that plays Kingpin,
My brain's telling me a lot of wrong names. Michael Clark Duncan.
Vincent
Vincent
D'Onofrio.
D'Onofrio, yes.
Yeah, Michael Clark Duncan was in the 2003 Daredevil movie.
My brain, the first thing it said was Jeffrey Dean Morgan. And I was like, no, shut up, brain.
Vincent D'Onofrio came back to play Kingpin from the Netflix one, but it's not until
Mm.
Echo that they fully confirmed that he is not an alternate universe Kingpin, but he is the same Netflix Kingpin. And they give him like they Echo point blank shot him in the eye in Hawkeye, and then he's got like a CGI digitally recreated, and then all of a sudden it's just normal again, completely fine eye back. And I don't know, it's weird. But anyways, Daredevil is supposed to be the first show that they drastically redid with the aim of moving it towards this Avengers Doomsday thing that they've come up with. And then we have 3 feature movies coming out this year in Captain America Brave New World,
Right. Yeah.
Thunderbolts, and Fantastic Four First Steps.
So let me guess. Captain America is going to introduce Thunderbolt Ross as the Red Hulk,
Yes,
and
which
Thunderbolts is
which
going to be a team of people, including the Red Hulk.
not including the Red Hulk as far as we know.
Oh, okay, interesting. What were you going to say about the Red Hulk?
Um, the Will, William Hurt,
Yeah, he was Thunderbolt Ross.
yes, he passed away, and so they've replaced him with Harrison Ford. And
All
so
right.
Harrison Ford plays Red Hulk, and he looks like he's having a blast with it. But if you watch the trailers for I think I'm getting caught up because it was going to be called New World Order, but then they didn't like the way that sounded, so it's now it's Brave New World or Bold New World and whatnot. But um, it's got like like tick 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 tack, like it's got this beat, and it's like different frames of the screen doing this like really grounded spy thriller theme, and then Red Hulk shows up. And the tones just don't mesh with each other. And
So go on.
Giancarlo Esposito's there's a bad guy too. But like, I don't know. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say that sounds the same. It sounds like they have a problem with Captain America movies because Captain America: Winter Soldier was like a spy thriller 85% of the time.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, well, we got to blow up a giant helicarrier, three giant helicarriers, or whatever it was. And it turns into, CG masturbation by the end. And if it had just stayed a spy thriller, it would have been great.
Yeah.
I still like it. It's still one of my favorites from what the haze of dozens of Marvel movies that I saw over the course of the last decade and a half.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds maybe they won't make mistakes. You can't judge a movie by its trailer, really.
I
It's meant
mean,
to bring in audiences more than anything else.
the trailers honestly look good. The trailer for Thunderbolts looks good. I love seeing Florence Pugh kind of in like the main character seat. And I love that they're pulling a lot of threads of characters that feel like they were kind of left to the wayside, like Taskmaster, who a lot of people didn't really care for in Black Widow, or Ghost, I think is the tag name for the character from Ant-Man and the Wasp,
Hmm.
that can like phase through walls and stuff like that. Like this team is made up of like your straggler characters, like including Wyatt Russell as the I
Oh
think
yeah,
uh
bad Captain America.
yeah, Bad to America. Wha- US agent. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then Bill Pullman, who is like rapidly becoming an actor that I'm very much a fan of, is playing a character called Sentry. And um it has the potential to be like a really interesting, like fun movie, but I can't tell if it's just going to turn into more blah CG action spectacle or not. Everything looks very grounded and shot in camera and very contained and very tense. And everything I've heard about Fantastic Four, I'm looking forward to. But it's just this year, we had such a break. This year, the biggest movies that we had were like Dune Part 2, Inside Out 2, Civil War, Nosferatu, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Furiosa, The Fall Guy, Alien Romulus, Beetlejuice 2, Quiet Place Day 1. It was garbage, but Borderlands, everything that was based on an IP uh
Hmm.
was not really a superhero movie. It was a time of like exploring different avenues and tones of things. And now with these three movies and with Superman, we're just going right back into it.
Mm.
And on DC's side, like they have Creature Commandos, which I think is already out, which is like the first in canon project, that is also retroactively making other things like his Suicide Squad movie canon and stuff like that.
Oh boy.
But and then you have Peacemaker season 2, season 1 of which is not canon to the DCU, but um and then you have Superman coming out, and then DC's doing its usual animated movies that are separate, like Batman, Nightfall, and whatnot. But like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready for like a Superman movie that's trying to be Guardians of the Galaxy, or a fourth Fantastic Four movie. You know, I,
So so two things. One, I wish you had said Beetlejuice 2, Inside Out 2, this 2, Nosferatu. I wish.
I
Oh well. I'm probably didn't send this to you, but I saw a tweet that said Nosferatu will return in Nosferatu. Um, But the other thing is, I'm hopeful, and not a lot of people know this about me. Is that and this almost feels like a coming out, in as much as coming out is becoming more normalized.
Mm,
Coming out this way, I think, is not that most of the world is not ready for this. Is that Superman is probably one of my favorite superheroes, because he represents, and there's a lot of problems with him, sure, but Superman represents like, what if any individual person had the power to affect good, positive change in the world? And then the logical conclusion you should come to is, well, you do, and you should. And that's why Superman is one of my favorite superheroes.
mm.
Everybody knows now. You can throw tomatoes if you want. I know a lot of people don't like Superman. He's a Boy Scout. He's super black and white or whatever. But I think that sometimes you need that. That, hey, that's wrong, and we should fix it. And that's what Superman's all about. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think that Superman is in a unique position because it's one of the first movies based on a comic book back in the
Yeah.
70s, the 1970s, the mid to late 20th century.
Mm,
Just, I'm trying to make you feel as old as possible. We were born in the late 20th century,
yep.
um, to make it a fun way to phrase it. And Superman movies have had ups and downs over the last 60, almost 60 years, 50, 60 years. I think that the glut of Marvel movies and other comic book based movies and TV shows have loosened things up a little bit to make a Superman movie the way it should have been made the whole time. To bring those ridiculous elements in that we've been missing out on in a good way. I realize that superhero movies and comic book based movies have the capacity to bring in those ridiculous elements and it not work at all.
I
But
mean,
you look at Nathan Fillion as one of the
Guy
Green
Gardner.
Lanterns. Yeah, Guy Gardner. And he's got that stupid bowl cut going
Yep.
on. I think that's great. I
Yeah.
think like it because that's just how the guy looks. And to allude a little bit to the main event that we're talking about today, Wolverine's outfit,
Hmm.
one, it doesn't work on film, but that's the point.
Yeah.
Is because that's why they axed it in the first place. And a movie like Deadpool and Wolverine, it works because it looks ridiculous. Um, but that's what it looked like in the comics and the
Yeah.
cartoons. And so we're ready now for things that look ridiculous on their face, but ultimately don't really matter, like Guy Gardner, like the yellow Wolverine costume, like Crypto the dog.
Hmm.
And I am hopeful, this to bring it all full circle, I'm hopeful that this does Superman justice and is not just another Marvel movie. It looks a little less ironic. You know how like every movie became ironic for a while?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got
Yes.
my fingers crossed.
I it just to me it's my red flag here, and it's weird because he's just made a constant string of like in movies that I enjoy. It's James Gunn.
Mm,
Um he cares about the characters he cares about, and if he doesn't care for the character, he dramatically changes it to make it work the way that he wants it to, like Adam Warlock or Drax.
mm,
And he's great with ensembles, but he's also just kind of great at making them entertaining, not necessarily making them thematically symbolic or hopeful. You know,
mhm,
I don't think of Guardians of the Galaxy 1 or 2 and think of it as like more than just like a really well done action adventure comedy like movie, superhero movie. The third one I think is a little bit elevated. I think that there's so much personally that happens with the characters, and there's so much at stake for them emotionally, that it is a little bit different. Now his Suicide Squad movie, I mean, I like it. He's able to create empathy for a character like Polka Dot Man. He's able to do a lot of things, but it just, I just, I see him just making splashy movies that ultimately don't stick with me. And for
Hmm.
him to be in charge of everything, it's got me concerned that what's going to happen is we're going to pump a couple $1 billion into multiple projects that he's going to make only for it to not resonate with everyone, start to not make the money that DC wants it to make, that Warner Brothers wants it to make, and we're just going to be rebooting it again in a couple of years. And like there's a lot going for this Superman movie with that trailer. Like you said, Crypto the Superdog, Nicholas Holt as Lex Luthor, Guy Gardner, just there being a Green Lantern in the movie at all, I'm excited about. They also got like recently they released Kyle Chandler's got his like beard grown out and everything because he's gonna be Hal Jordan in the TV show that they're working on. Um it just I don't know. Like it just seems like too much to me. There's too many red flags of like
That's
overstocking.
his cape.
Yeah, overstocking character, overstocking characters, multiplying your villains. um, Superman is someone who literally has the weight of the world on his shoulders, but you're making a movie where he is doing everything, and it's just like,
I think that's thematically appropriate in this movie. Based on the trailer, it is as if he's getting tired of it. You remember that first poster we saw where he looks like he just rolled out of bed at 3 a.m.
yeah.
and he's putting on his boots and he just looks miserable. I think that's the point, is that he's tired of it. And I wonder if like Lex Luthor's like plan in this one is going to be like, well, why don't you just leave? Like,
Mm.
why don't you just go somewhere else? And like you mentioned villains. Who are the villains? Is Guy Gardner a villain or is he a hero? I know that he's
No, he's a
kind of in
hero.
between in the comics.
No, he's just an asshole. He's fine.
Okay.
Um,
But it's Lex
but
Luthor and who else is in this as
the
a villain?
the alien face. I'm not sure if it's actually Brainiac, but the big guy's alien face.
Big guy alien face.
Maybe it wasn't Brainiac. But
I I don't know.
okay. I mean, this is saying
Seven
it's just gonna
villains
be Lex
confirmed to
Luthor.
appear. What? Oh
Yeah.
well, it's Lex Luthor's henchmen is two of them,
I,
so that doesn't count. Ultraman. What? As in like the Japanese hero Ultraman?
I,
Or are
I
we talking about an American Marvel character or DC character called Ultraman? Anyway, I don't know. But so I will say I get where you're coming from when it comes to like James Gunn being able to make a movie where it's just like, is it going to have staying power? I think that James Gunn is adaptable enough to not just make Guardians of the Galaxy every time,
yeah.
because he made Guardians of the Galaxy and then the Suicide Squad was different enough. There were still quips and irony. It doesn't look as if Superman is going to have that. But I do also think that Superman is a movie where, or is a series of movies where you're kind of going to have that lack of staying power because he's
Mm,
one person, and having it a similar story retold over and over again with a different actor in the role of Superman, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing if it boils down to what I described earlier of it's about having power and responsibility, which, that's what Spider-Man purports to be about. But, it's usually I'm a nerdy high school kid and I'm awkward, but I'm also a superhero.
yeah.
Uh, Meanwhile,
which
Superman
is
is like,
one of the TV shows coming out next year.
oh my God.
It's animated.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. It's cool.
By the way, I've said for years, I haven't watched this if it's out yet or not. The Rohirrim show, the anime. I've
It's not
said
a
for
show. It's a movie,
oh, is it a movie?
and it's a good one.
Well, never mind. I was gonna say the Lord of the Rings ideal adaptation is an anime television series, in my opinion.
Okay.
That's what the Lord of the Rings should be adapted to visually. I've said that for a long time to two people and now three. So hopefully the entire series gets adapted into a series. Anyway, I'm hopeful for Superman, but I also think like when you watch Superman Returns and then you watch Man of Steel and then you watch the
I mean,
Christopher Reeve Superman.
I would say that Christopher Reeve's Superman and Superman 2 and Man of Steel are the movies that have the most like icon to them, like that are like the most memorable. Like I'm always gonna remember Christopher Reeve flying and winking and catching Lois Lane and all of that. But I'm also gonna remember Henry Cavill putting his fist to the ground and then taking off for the first time and trying to learn to fly. Like
Mhm.
I, it's just to me. And this kind of brings me up to, I think, our discussion of Deadpool and Wolverine. What happened is we had a glut of superheroes. And then we had this really quiet year where we can see what the world looks like and where we go creatively without them.
Mm.
And in that, we have this one movie that stands out, Deadpool and Wolverine. And it's just interesting to me to see what lessons has Hollywood learned from having this year and a half off of doing this stuff. And it looks like we're just going right back into the glut. And I don't know that that's the best thing. I feel like I said it before, I'm gonna say it again. I feel like we're on a trajectory where blockbusters are going to start not making enough money
Hmm.
because people are burned out by like the amount of things coming out. Like because there was in 2023 there was a bunch of movies that tanked all in a row, like Indiana Jones 5, Mission Impossible, like a bunch of them. But um I feel like what's going to happen then is studios are going to start looking at, well, what can we make a fast return on? And the movies that are making a lot of money that don't cost a lot of money to make are horror movies.
Right.
And so I feel like jumping hard into more and more and more superhero stuff is going to lead us to a horror movie revolution. And I don't know that that's going to work for a majority of audiences. It's just going to make a ton of money from smaller crowds of audiences. And then I think the whole machine from there kind of grinds to a halt. And so it's just, it's anxious thinking and it's thinking too far in the future. And who knows, maybe Superman's going to be amazing. I know Daredevil's going to be amazing, but, and Fantastic Four is probably going to be good. It'd be interesting for the fourth of those movies to be the one that works. Um, just hopefully
Not
it's
counting the one from like 1990 or
no,
whatever that was.
including that one. That's the first one. Oh, well, no, I guess because they made two
They made two with
with Tim Story directing.
you got
So
to remember Rise of the Silver Surfer.
yeah, never mind. This is the fifth one. Well, it's the fourth reboot.
There you go.
Um,
But all that being said, I I don't know.
yeah.
Go on.
So Deadpool and Wolverine came out, and the movie literally its story is being in this little pocket of a universe where everything is on hold and you can't really move forward, and
Mhm.
you're sort of dealing with cleaning up the past. And I thought that worked really well on a metatextual level for what the movie is like in the history of all these movies coming out. Um, I like this movie.
Yeah,
It's pretty good.
I also like this movie. I don't love it, but so it's one of those things where things are timeless and things are very much of a time.
Hmm.
This movie is very much of a time, and during that time, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Outside of that time, will it hold up? Are enough of the conflicts and satirical themes presented in this things that everyone will continue to deal with over the decades and centuries? Probably not. Will we have a bad Cajun accent from Channing Tatum in a future movies? I hope so. Which, by the way, my dad is Cajun, and he didn't like that. He was like, "That's not how people talk in Louisiana." And I was like, I know, it is played up for comedic effect. Whew, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
Yeah.
But actually, hey, real quick, it is kind of how people talk in Louisiana. Um, my dad doesn't talk like that, mostly because he had years of speech therapy as a kid. My grandfather did talk like that, kind of. But no, I like this movie. I like it.
I have some criticisms of it, but I'm gonna run through the stats real quick. It got
Stat
an
me up.
it got an A cinema score.
Okay.
Um, which, I think is it's like fair. Again, cinema score is people's cards when they come out of the movie,
Mm,
estimating like rating what they think the movie is, and then they use that to estimate how successful it's going to be. Yeah, I don't think this was an A plus. That makes sense. One of the criticisms I will level at the movie is I think that they wasted and screwed with the character Vanessa. Um, and I'll kind of have to explain
mm,
that more in a minute because it has to do with Deadpool 1 and 2, where she was essentially uh, a subversion of the damsel in distress in the first Deadpool
mm.
movie. And then she was a character who is trying for him to become the best like version of himself, but also someone who's like like going to care about other people, and she does kind of want him to save the world, and she wants him to like just this twist on her character of being like, oh, I can't be with you if you're not going to be an Avenger. Like, she's all she wanted him was to not die of cancer before. Like it's weird. uh,
Well,
it's
did she explicitly say that, or was that presented as like he feels inadequate? That's how I interpret it. Is that
see
he felt inadequate because he thought she deserved better,
it it
and
it happens a couple of different ways. There's some twists and turns to it, but the part of the memory that Cassandra Nova doesn't screw with, as far as I know, where she's talking to him and she says like, ever since you didn't get to be an Avenger, like you've given up. I, he starts to question her. He's like, just say you don't want to be with me. And then before she turns and actually says, I don't want to be with you, and he's like, that's not what happened. Oh no, this is Cassandra Nova messing with my brain. There's that moment where she's just like, she's quiet and she's struggling to answer him because he's not Deadpool.
well, no, I interpreted that differently as I've been in a situation like that, and people self destruct, and when they do, they're not usually conscious of that. But
Mm,
to another person, when somebody says to you, just say you don't want to be with me, I would get quiet in that situation and wonder like, how could this person possibly think that's how I perceive them? So
mm.
I was also under the impression that she was messing with the memory from the beginning, and it took him a minute to realize,
Well,
oh wait a minute, that's not what she said.
but they are split up though.
They are split up, but again, I think that's because of him rather than her. I think it was because he probably said, we should break up because you deserve better. And she never thought that. That was my interpretation of how it went down.
Okay. I mean, okay. All right. Um,
And
And that
that's a real conversation too when they talk at the same time at the party.
yeah.
And I think she says, "How have you been?" And he says, "How are you seeing anyone?"
Yeah.
Oof,
Yeah.
it hurt. Um, you were about to say something. Sorry.
Well, Metacritic, based on 58 critic reviews, it has a 56 out of 100.
Okay.
Out of 1,813 users, it's 8.0.
Hmm.
So, some of the things the critics have said, it's mostly mixed. There's only 10% of them are negative. Um,
Hmm.
and I can see it. I mean, there are definitely issues. Oh my gosh. Okay. Um, enjoyable but messy. Yeah, it can
Yeah.
be
Sure.
obnoxious but very funny. Slapdash, repetitive, sometimes shoddy looking. Um, I I do think it's just taking everything and putting it out into like the desert and into the grassy fields and putting it in like a CGI backdrop where a smoke monster can come attack you. Like if that's like the setting of your movie, yeah, it's not always gonna look like the prettiest movie ever. But some of the
I
some of the
go on.
CG in the movie didn't work for me also, but go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say we didn't have a Thor: The Dark World moment of that ghost child that looks like a student project CG. We didn't
Hmm.
have anything like that. I felt like
Yeah.
I get it,
That's
but
the thing. I think I'm just a little too cynical for some things. Like
all right, just
Thor
go ahead and cut it there. We've reached the crux of everything. We're done.
of
Wrap it up, boys.
Thor's crying. Why is Thor crying? Well, they don't know yet. They just wrote that and they're gonna try and come up with an excuse for it later.
Ooh, I mean, yeah.
You
As a
know,
fellow cynic, I totally get that, and I hate knowing about how movies are made because I can't enjoy them. Because I'll be like, that's not how that happened. This is way different. Like, let's take it back to Fast and Furious. There's an ad lib at the end of one of the movies where The Rock says, "Better hide your forehead," to Tyrese. And then early in the movie, there's remarks about his head. And I think that they filmed that early and he made that quip about his forehead. And then they were like, we got to write that in. We got to add that earlier in the movie. But to go back to the CG business, two things. One, Wolverine's cowl mask is real,
mhm.
but people were like, the CG looks so bad on that mask. It's a real mask. Like it's really we're just so used to seeing CG and we're so ready to criticize it
Yeah.
that people were like the mask looked bad.
There
They're not
is
wrong. The mask looked bad, but it was a real mask. The
there's
other hang on once I'm so
you go
sorry.
ahead.
One other thing is the set pieces, the backdrops, I think are less important. It's all about these two guys, Deadpool and Wolverine. And so yeah, the CG could use some tweaking, some polish, but it was always about these two and what they're encountering and how they're reacting to it that was important.
Mhm.
If this were Jurassic Park and the whole point was the creatures, then that's one thing. And it's incredible to me, by the way, that 32 years ago we had better CG because of the care that was put into it than many movies have now. I digress. So I don't think the CG is that offensive because it's not the star of the show. It is
Yeah.
like who said that about CG shouldn't be the point of the story, and it should be used to help tell the story. Who said that?
George Lucas.
What? That's crazy.
Uh yeah.
So go on. I mentioned the
It's a
mask, and you
tool.
looked like
It's a
you.
means of telling a story.
I thought you said he's a tool. Sorry, you were doing the quote. So I mentioned something about the mask, and you had something lined up, I think, about that.
There's just one shot after the giant one take shot in the movie, which is consequenceless in a way that bothers me, but is epic and is really cool to look at, where he is fully CG at the end when the two of them like are
Mm,
finally done at the end, and he's like, and like he is moving and he looks like CGI jelly paste.
He looks
But
like gummy Wolverine.
yes, but you know, it's he the way that he has to move. It like you the one of the shots that I think is super effective is in the first fight where they're playing what's the song? Is it Guns N' Roses?
The first fight,
Hell's Bells?
AC/DC.
AC/DC. Yeah. Where he charges forward on all fours.
Mm.
Wolverine does. Hugh Jackman can't do that. Um, but it's
Oh, come
incredibly
on. Don't sell
effective.
him short. Maybe it was Andy Serkis.
Oh, maybe.
Fellow
Um,
No, he's from New Zealand.
but
Where's Andy
yeah.
Serkis from?
Uh, I think
Andy
he's
Serkis.
British. I don't think.
English. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Okay.
So, close. They spell color with a U, both of them.
I'm seeing a trend here. Deadpool and Wolverine on IMDb is 7.6 out of 10.
Mm.
So if you take audiences and you take critics and you meet kind of in the middle, you got
Hmm.
like a thing there. And then Rotten Tomatoes, you have a 78% uh, of all critics gave it a fresh review, and 92% audience gave it that. So all things averaged out, we're looking at a movie that's like a high B.
Mm.
And audiences are definitely having more fun with it than critics. And I think critics are being a little more critical of the movie as a movie that will stand the test of time, where audiences are more, you know, enjoying the ride of it for what it is. I don't think there's a long attention span with some of the reviews here, like thinking, like, okay, so it's amazing that Elektra and Blade and Gambit and X-23 are in the movie, but how even Johnny Storm, like the whole idea here is you're making this movie and it's very intentionally made as an episode of Marvel.
Right.
And it functions that way. Like everything in this movie is not enough to be a story that is just like, I want to watch a movie that is a superhero movie from beginning to end and have it includes on itself. Like there is a story of Deadpool wanting to be an Avenger, wanting to matter, wanting to be something bigger, and his partnership with Wolverine in doing that. That story is there,
Hmm.
but it is supplemented by being part of this ongoing thing, and it's not allowed to exist in a vacuum. And all of that ongoingness is going to age. It's going to be an issue. It's going to be like watching uh Ant-Man 2, like
Hmm.
it's Ant-Man 2 is a story in and of itself, and it's fairly effective for what it is, but it's the movie that comes out where Paul Rudd is on pause until at the end of the movie he gets caught in the quantum realm so that he can show up in Endgame,
Hmm.
and everybody gets dusted because of Infinity War. Like it's just
Well, so
it
is this along the lines of what I described earlier? If it's not timeless. It
it's
is.
not timeless, but well, the question is the overall story that it is one piece of timeless? Um and that's interesting to me because I feel like we can go back to the aughts. We can go back and look at Iron Man, and we can see that the movies have gradually become less grounded over time. This is about as comic book friendly as you can go.
Hmm. Oh,
And
absolutely. And
in
well, and that.
contrast to
Oh, go on.
Captain America Winter Soldier, which is trying to be as grounded as it can be until the explosions happen. Go ahead.
Well, so then that begs the question: what about comic books? Comic books are the same way, where there's so much material And is all of that timeless? Is all of it cohesive? And the answer is no. But does the medium suffer because of it? And I think the answer is no there as well. I don't think the same can be true of movies. Movies have such a mass appeal along with high production cost compared to comic books that you can afford to be a little loosey goosey with your comics. You can't necessarily afford to be loosey goosey with hundreds of millions of dollars in movie production. Well,
Yeah,
I say that you can, but it's considered a risk, and
and
many
people don't
Hollywood
want to take
studios
risks.
minimize risk. Exactly. When in fact they should be risking. So I meant to say this earlier, but I forgot. And it was in the context of sequels and existing IPs. The secret sauce, and and whoever makes movies based on this, I expect a check, please, because I know the secret sauce and I'm about to tell it to you, is to not directly make something based on an IP, but to take all the trappings of that IP and that style and then make something new.
Yeah.
Because you know who did that?
Mm,
George Lucas.
mm,
Multiple times.
yeah.
He made Indiana Jones, which was based on adventure serials that he watched as a kid. And he made Star Wars, which was based on Westerns, and Akira pretty much exactly ripped off Akira Kurosawa.
Mm.
And
And Dune.
then, and Dune, and made a massive franchise. Do that. You're not risking anything because you know the formula works, but you're also not basing it exactly on Star Wars or exactly on Indiana Jones, and you're
But
making your own thing.
I think in terms of like expenses and risks, Marvel has taken three big risks that have had mixed results. And I think one was Guardians of the Galaxy. And because that
Mm-hmm.
worked so well, they made everything in their universe that has to do with being cosmic aesthetically fit and fold into Guardians of the Galaxy. And they've just stuck with that,
Sure.
regardless of what else happens cosmically in the MCU. Then was the Eternals, which is all shot on location. It's very DC superheroes. It's taking a lot of characters that people didn't know and like relying on getting some big names and some huge talent to get it behind it. And they've, of course, never followed it up and canceled any ideas for follow-ups unless they show up in the next two Avengers movies. And then I'm going to say that the last time they took a huge risk, especially because it was during COVID, was Spider-Man No Way Home,
Mm.
with deciding to use this multiversal thing that they're trying to make work and to bring back other Spider-Man characters and try and tell a story that had meaning while overreaching and connecting their one story of movies to more stories of movies.
Mm.
And it worked for them financially, but artistically and creatively, that movie, it's dumb.
You can toss those two words out the window, artistically and
Yeah,
creatively. It's about profit. How much
yeah.
money is Marvel slash Disney going to make off of this movie? Like, so Eternals is a great example, which I keep wanting to call Immortals, and that's a very different movie. Um, not too bad, to be honest, if I remember 20
Yep.
years ago when it came out. That's not quite true. It was like 15. But are they going to make another one? And it was like $250 million budget with a $450 million box office take. That's a profit of $200 million, let's say. Are they going to make another one? Probably not. That's not enough
Right. That's the
to
problem.
make the money back. Right. It should be lots of smaller movies, cast a wider net, diversify your portfolio. You know, I can't believe I'm saying this to these executives who are absolutely watching our videos. And you've got to diversify your portfolio. Yeah, make horror movies like you said earlier, because they're low budget with
Well,
relatively good return, but also make a fantasy movie, make a comic book movie, make a romance, dabble in all of these other things.
Yeah. And it just like because they have to continue to make such high grosses in order to have growth, they
Mhm.
feel like they can't it has to be on tent poles. They can't do it because what Marvel should be doing is what they're doing with their TV shows. Like there should already be a movie by now that takes the characters that worked for people like Werewolf by Night, Moon Knight.
Mm.
They did put Miss Marvel in the Marvels, Captain Marvel. Like she has shown up in a big budget feature. But like Hawkeye, like is got her. She's gonna be in Thunderbolts now. Florence Pugh. There are little bits where they're starting to pick up on this, but they have the ability to do these smaller scale, lower budget features, specializing on certain characters, and then take the ones that resonate with people and do bigger things with them. It's cast a wide, small net and then make your safe, bigger pictures on what you know works with people. That's a really, really good idea. They just have to stop acting like everything they do has to be the next biggest thing in the world. And they have to stop making infinity of them. We're getting Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Daredevil, Ironheart, and Eyes of Wakanda this year. We're getting 4 TV shows and 3 movies. We're getting 7 Marvel projects in 2025.
Woof.
I'm man, like I just don't care. Like and
Yeah,
even
yeah.
even though I really enjoy pretty much everything conceptually that they're putting out, and I'm probably gonna watch most of it. It's just uh
Yeah. Ugh. That pretty much sums it up. Um, the so Deadpool and Wolverine specifically, I think that this critical response is perfectly warranted. I do want to go ahead and say that.
yep,
And I
I
think that
agree.
IMDb reviews show a pretty impressive amount of restraint in giving it the score I think it deserves. High 7, low 8.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I think that's about right. Uh, I also think that I let me put a pin in what I was about to say. It's about cameos in Marvel movies,
Mm-hmm.
and how it did these right versus Multiverse of Madness doing it wrong. But again, the IMDb reviews show an incredible amount of restraint because people tend to be like, this movie just came out and I love it, and I'm gonna go to IMDb and give it a 10 out of 10 no matter what. And I feel like Dark Knight Rises and The Dark Knight are high on that list
Yeah.
because of their recency. I think that's a word. Versus, The Godfather and The Shawshank Redemption predating IMDb, but
Mm-hmm.
still being up near the top. So I think this movie doesn't really have staying power, but in the context of Marvel, in the context of living life in the early 21st century, it gets it right. I also think that they got some stuff past Disney that I'm honestly shocked,
No.
and they hang it on a lampshade too. For example, the line "pegging's not new for me." Hang on, let me look this way. Pegging's not new for me, but it is for Disney. Like
Yeah.
that, I I wasn't shocked at hearing pegging in a feature film. I
Yeah.
was shocked at hearing pegging in a movie released by Disney where it's hung on a lampshade saying, this is a Disney movie where I just referenced pegging.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I think that fourth wall breaks are tricky.
Mm.
They feel cheap sometimes. Um, and then when there's so many layers that it is cheap and they know it's cheap and they tell you it's cheap and then they do it. One of the funniest moments in that movie is when handsome Deadpool is like, I can do that too.
Nice Pool.
The Proposal.
Yeah.
That
I was just
that
gonna
is
talk about
funny.
Nice Pool. Yeah.
Although the best line in that movie, the funniest line in that movie, is one that I don't think gets enough credit, and it's when Matthew McFadden says, "It appears you soiled yourself when you were unconscious," and Deadpool replies, "I wasn't unconscious. Who are you people?" That's so funny.
I think one of my favorite moments in the movie has to be when Nice Pool has just been used as a body shield and been absolutely obliterated. And he's like, "How fast do you regenerate?" Regenerate?
Regenerate. Well, I think
Wait, and then Deadpool tries to say it's like self-defense or whatever, and Wolverine's like it's murder. Like you just murdered somebody. Like
do any of the Wolverine variants have an Australian accent, by the way? Because I think he should have had an Australian accent, personally.
hmm,
I don't think they did. But anyway,
they should have.
um, yeah,
That's
that's
also
murder.
great. That montage of looking for Wolverines is pretty
Well,
spectacular.
that I think that leads to what I was talking about earlier of cameos. That's not specifically what I was referring to, but to have Henry Cavill as Wolverine, just because we know people love Henry Cavill, and there's literally no other reason to have him in this movie, that's
Oh,
great.
again, I'm being cynical, but I think it's the same reason they had John Krasinski as Reed Richards. I think it's like fans say they want this. Let's test
I
it
see.
out and see if this is
Well,
something we'll invest in.
they both had that and the opposite extreme of comic book accurate Wolverine, where he's like 5'2".
Yeah, yeah,
And it was like, there he is. Look at this little guy. And he chops him up. Brown suit Wolverine, which is peak Wolverine design, in my opinion.
yeah,
I wish there were more of him. And I wish that it were a little more vibrant. Like you could see the orange a little more. It's like cheddar cheese, to be
yeah.
honest. And well, in the comic, so in the movie, it should have been a little brighter, I think.
Mm,
Couldn't show the Hulk, though, um,
yeah,
directly because of and that's a little weird because that's antithetical to the whole point of this movie is we're bringing in all the properties that we couldn't bring together before. We can't show the Hulk. Um,
yeah.
but again, the cameo stuff, like you mentioned Reed Richards, it's like, oh, look at all these people we got to come into this movie. We're going to kill them off in the next 10 minutes. Oh, why? Like they deserve better. Like Haley Atwell as Captain Britain, she deserved so much more than that.
Mm.
And then in this, you have Blade coming back. You have Elektra coming
Only ever
back.
been one blade. Only ever gonna be one blade.
Damn right, Wesley. My dog is named after this guy.
Yeah.
Um, from that movie, from the original Blade. And then you have the beloved casting of Channing Tatum as Gambit for no other reason than like there was discussion he was going to get cast and then it fell apart and they were like, you know what, just come on back,
Yeah.
just step right into it. I
And there's
do
a
wish.
really go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
There
Oh,
was
what, real quick. Sorry, I do wish that Taylor Kitsch had been there too.
yeah.
I
I wish there had been more of a nod to X-Men Origins Wolverine being that is
mm.
the other movie that both Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds played their respective characters in.
Was there
But
like a reaction shot where he's like, "Do I know you from someplace?" Like Wolverine looking at Gambit and being like, "Did we used to be on a team in a movie that bombed real hard because it sucked?" Um,
nah, that Wolverine comes from a different universe than that
well, right, but I
timeline.
mean, like,
So
it doesn't matter. None of this
yeah,
matters.
it
To
could. Yeah.
to quote Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, it doesn't matter. None of this matters. Um, the I real quick again. This has nothing to do with Deadpool and Wolverine. Cut it if you like. But I feel compelled to tell you Taylor Kitsch got robbed. Generally, Taylor Kitsch was a great
Of a
actor.
career,
I mean,
yeah.
he's not dead or anything. But he's not in anything anymore. But he was in bomb after bomb, and he should have been in more good stuff. Like
Yep.
John Carter was a pretty good movie.
Yep.
but it was called.
wasn't.
Well, yeah. Nor was X-Men Origins Wolverine, and John Carter bombed, regardless of being a good movie. True Detective Season 2 bombed because it wasn't True Detective Season 1, even though it was fine. But that's all it was fine. And like the critical element with John Carter is changing the name to just be John Carter. What bonehead thought, oh, well, we were going to call it John Carter of Mars, and then we just changed the name to John Carter, which eliminates any interest anyone is going to have in this movie whatsoever. You guys know John Carter. Yeah, he owes me $5. What? No, I don't know John Carter. John Carter of Mars? Oh, that's interesting. Let me go see that. Anyway, Taylor Kitsch got robbed. He should have been in Deadpool Wolverine, but he wasn't.
Yeah. So, all right. So, I think I agree with the critical response for Deadpool and Wolverine. And I think, for time's sake, I got to ask you, what is Skittles O'Henry doing?
Skittles O'Henry is a lazy sack and hasn't finished Alan Wake 2 yet. Until yesterday when he started streaming again after like 3 weeks. Holidays were tough. Not like tough like I was crying the whole time, just tough to coordinate streaming alongside everything else. I work in e-commerce in my day job, and that means Q4 of the year is the busiest time. And I am working my way towards having a job that it doesn't matter and I can actually take time off. And my job isn't dependent on people buying things when they're supposed to. But I think what's up next is probably playing through Dark Souls on stream. Maybe playing some games I missed last year before I do that. Games like Mouthwashing. Do not show that on screen right now.
Okay.
Although it would really be funny for you to show it while I'm saying don't show that. It is both of the games I'm about to mention are body horror oriented. Mouthwashing and Still Wakes the Deep is another game that I might play on stream. It's just, if streaming were my full-time job and I worked for a sole proprietorship of me, myself, and I, and could write off buying games as a business expense, that'd be one thing, but I can't. So I don't play new games very often. Another game is Immortality that I would love to play. So you asked, what is Skittles O'Henry playing? Alan Wake 2, who cares? What is Skittles O'Henry going to play? A lot of very, very interesting games. Was that Thanos?
No,
what did it cost?
Maybe accidentally.
Everything. But probably
Count Orlok.
Does he say that?
He sounds like these.
I still haven't seen that. I did see everyone should start Count Orlok maxing. Just grow a stupid mustache, have a Belgian accent, be 6'3", all this stuff. Yeah, it's easy for us.
Yeah.
I can grow a stupid mustache or just shave the rest of my beard off. And I could fake an accent. Maybe not that one.
But with practice.
Oh, yeah. Anything's possible with practice. Not anything. But yeah, so like there's a lot of games. I'm going to mention them again just so people can look forward to me never actually playing them. Mouthwashing, Still Wakes the Deep, Immortality. I think one of which I own. And then probably the Dark Souls series, which is going to take me a long time to get through because I've never actually played 1 and 2 or Demon's Souls or Sekiro. So I call myself a fan, but I've only ever actually played through Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, and Elden Ring. And who knows? After that, I honestly would like to play stupid, boring children's games or something to where I don't really have to think about what I'm playing and really do anything involved. But we'll see. 2025 is a big year. I mean, it's as big as most other years. Smaller than last year, technically, but by one day. But we got a lot of time, so stay tuned. I'll tell you next time we talk. I'll have a better answer for you.
Okay. Sounds good.
Oh, all right. In my free time, I'm playing Celeste, and everybody should play Celeste.
Oh.